The tires of my truck crunched against the gravel as I turned onto Whispering Pine Lane, the narrow forest-fringed road that led to my family's lakeside cabin. The late summer air was sharp with pine and memory. After nearly 4 months volunteering with wildfire recovery in Colorado, I was looking forward to peace, coffee on the porch, and the familiar creak of my grandfather's rocking chair. But something felt off. My stomach tightened the moment I saw the cabin. Gone was the rustic charm of the weathered logs and sun-faded shutters. In their place stood a disturbingly polished facade, fresh paint, new planters, and a metal sculpture shaped like a windmill spinning on the porch. My handmade welcome sign had been replaced with a cursive font plaque that read, "Tranquil Pines, a modern mountain retreat." I threw the truck in park and stepped out. The gravel didn't feel right underfoot to evenly spread. The bushes had been trimmed to symmetrical little domes. The front deck had been stained a glossy, unnatural brown. This wasn't my cabin. That's when I heard the car. A black Range Rover zipped around the bend and skidded to a halt next to me. The door flung open, and out stepped the last person I wanted to see her in Huxley. Pine Hollow Hills HOA president, dictator in pearls, the kind of woman who printed rules just to feel something. "Well, well," she chirped, stepping out in her salmon blazer and beige pumps. "Daniel Hayes, in the flesh. We didn't get your reinstatement of residency form." I stared at her. "I don't need to reinstate anything. This is my property. I never unknowned it." Her smile flickered. "Yes, but with you gone for so long, we assumed." I moved past her, heart pounding as I mounted the porch steps. The lock was different. I pulled out my key thankfully. It still fit, but the door creaked open with a hesitant groan, like it didn't recognize me either. I froze in the doorway. Gone were my Navajo rug, the worn leather armchair, and my grandfather's handmade table. In their place were bland hotel-style furnishings, gray couches, abstract art prints, and chrome fixtures. The air smelled of lavender-scented cleaner, not cedar and dust. My home had been sanitized. What is this?" I muttered. Karen stepped in behind me, her heels clicking on the new tile floor. "We repurposed your cabin as a model home while you were away. Cleaned it up, staged it, modernized the aesthetic. We're rebranding Pine Hollow as a community." My fists clenched. "You broke into my home." "Oh no," she said quickly. "You misunderstand. We had access through the HOA's temporary reclamation clause, page 76 of the revised bylaws. If a property is vacant for 60 days, it can be used for community enhancement at board discretion." Enhancement? I spun toward her. "You've gutted my life." She arched a brow. "You'll find your items in the community storage unit." "Well, most of them." I was about to unleash every word I'd swallowed over the years when something caught my Aja paper on the kitchen counter. I walked over, heart pounding, and picked it up on an invoice dated last week. "Amazon," I said aloud. There it was, in black and white, my cabin listed as Karen's Alpine Escaper short-term rental experience with weekend bookings priced at $799 a night. Photos of my porch, my lake, my view, even a caption that read, "Curated Mountain Serenity hosted by a 5-star super." My voice dropped ice cold. "You listed my home on Amazon. You've been renting it out." Karen's smile cracked like a porcelain mask. "It was just an opportunity. The cabin was vacant. The board voted you committed fraud." I growled. "This isn't staging. This is theft." Karen straightened, but her voice shook. "You need to calm down, Mr. Hayes. You're making assumptions." I took out my phone, and now I'm calling the sheriff. For the first time, Karen lost her composure. "Daniel, let's be reasonable. There's no need to escalate this." But her voice was drowned out by the ringing in my ears, the scent of bleach, the taste of fury in the back of my throat. My cabin had been violated not just structurally but spiritually. As the phone connected, I stepped out onto the porch, looking out over the lake I'd fished since I was 8 years old. I could still hear her inside, pacing. This wasn't just a boundary crossed. This was war. And Karen had no idea what was coming next. Sheriff Dalton arrived just after sunset. His boots thudded softly on the cabin porch as he stepped through the door, hands resting on his belt, face drawn in that no-nonsense expression he wore even back in high school when he played linebacker. Scanned the room, taking in the unfamiliar furnishings. "This ain't what I remember." "Because it's not mine anymore," I replied grimly, holding out the printed invoice from the counter. "Karen's been renting it out on Amazon and probably other sites too. She even called it her Alpine Escape." Dalton flipped through the paperwork, whistling low. "You have a key. You've never signed over ownership. And she's profiting off your name. That's a problem." "That's not the half of it," I said, pointing toward the glossy photo on her listing. "She's got shots of my family heirlooms and their stuff she said was in storage, but clearly she used them to lure guests." Dalton nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "You're looking at trespassing, fraud, maybe even identity misrepresentation. But the HOA, they'll fight it." Karen's slippery. She probably buried her tracks in board approvals in fine print. I paced the floor, boots squeaking against the laminate. "So what now?" "We'll start by locking this place down." No more guests. I'll pull her rental history and talk to county records in the morning. If she made any money from this, it'll show up in the tax filings, but the bylaws, I trailed off. She's hiding behind them. Dalton nodded. That's turned into a racket. You're not the first to complain, but no one's ever had proof this blatant. Proof? That word echoed in my head like a bell. I needed more than outrage, I needed ammunition. Over the next few days, I dug in like it was war. My first stop was the Pine Hollow community office. The receptionist, a teenager with chipped blue nail polish and no poker face, looked like she'd swallowed a tack when I asked for copies of the HOA meeting minutes and updated bylaws. They're, internal documents. Sunshine, Act says I have a right to see them, I said calmly, especially when they involve my property. She reluctantly handed over a thick folder. I scanned the entries, and there it was, a single paragraph buried in the June update. Properties left unoccupied for a continuous period exceeding 60 days shall be eligible for temporary use in beautification projects as deemed appropriate by the HOA board. No vote count, no homeowner signatures, no indication anyone outside the board even knew it had passed. I kept reading. Another clause, added just a week later, allowed the HOA president to act as temporary trustee of unused properties for community-facing events and income-generating partnerships. Translation. Karen had written herself a legal cover to hijack people's homes, but the smoking gun came from an unexpected ally. Martha DeWitt lived 2 cabins down from mine. She was in her 70s, sharp as a tack, and widely feared in HOA circles for asking too many questions at town halls. When I knocked on her door, she invited me in like she'd been expecting me. I saw the sheriff's cruiser at your place, she said, handing me a glass of lemonade. Told you that woman was trouble. I need proof she did this knowingly, that she planned to profit from it. Do you hear anything? Martha gave me a sly smile and pulled out an old iPad. HOA board meetings are public. I record all of them. Thought you might want to hear June's session. She pressed play. Grainy audio crackled through the speaker. Karen's voice rang clear. If Hayes doesn't return, we call it abandoned. Rebrand the place. List it online. Maybe stage a few open houses. It's practically free money. A male voice laughed. And if he comes back, Karen again, then we spin it. Say it was all for community presentation. Besides, he's always off saving forests or whatever. He won't care. The audio ended. I sat in stunned silence. Can I copy this? I asked. Martha winked. Already emailed it to your sheriff friend. By the end of the week, Dalton had everything he needed to move forward. But I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was going to expose Karen in front of the very people she claimed to protect. And this time, she wouldn't be able to hide behind bylaws and fake smiles. She stole my home. Now I'd take hers apart piece by piece. The HOA clubhouse was packed. Word had spread fast after the sheriff's office launched an investigation. Curious homeowners, frustrated residents, and even a local news crew filled the folding chairs. Phones were out. Voices were hushed. The air buzzed with tension. Karen sat at the head of the board table, her pastel blazer crisp, her hair immaculately curled, but the forced smile on her face couldn't hide the tightness in her jaw. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know how big. I stood near the back with Sheriff Dalton and my attorney, Diego Rodriguez Sharp.com, and Dangerous in a 3-piece suit. On the table in front of him sat a leather folder fat with documents and a portable speaker. Karen tapped her gavel once. Let's come to order. I know there's been some confusion surrounding the use of community properties. Diego stepped forward, cutting through the murmurs like a scalpel. Confusion, he said smoothly. That's one word for criminal fraud. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen stiffened. Excuse me, sir, this meeting is for board members and homeowners only. Diego pulled out a laminated document and held it up. Daniel Hayes, property owner, taxpayer, U.S. veteran, illegally defrauded by this board, and now represented. Karen blinked, clearly recalculating. I stepped beside him. You know what you did? You listed my cabin on Amazon. You rented it out under your name. You used my belongings in your ad. And when I returned, you pretended it was just community enhancement. That clause was approved. No, Diego interrupted, pulling out a printed page and tossing it on the table. It was inserted. No quorum, no vote from the broader HOA, just a board-level edit you made yourself. Then he pressed play on the speaker. Karen's voice echoed through the clubhouse. If Hayes doesn't return, we call it abandoned. It's practically free money. The room erupted. Someone shouted, you said it was a community decision. Another yelled, you rented my place last year too. Karen scrambled. This is being taken out of context. Diego raised a hand. We have Amazon transaction records, tax filings, emails with rental agreements, and video evidence. You broke into his home. You altered legal documents, and you profited without consent or compensation. Sheriff Dalton stepped forward, one hand resting on his holster. Ms. Huxley, based on the evidence presented, you are being charged with trespass, fraud, misappropriation of property, and violation of state HOA regulations. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Her hands trembled. You can't arrest me in front of the board, she hissed. Dalton nodded grimly. Yes, I can. He pulled out the cuffs as she stood in stunned silence. Karen Huxley, you have the right to remain silent. No, this is a mistake, she shrieked. I built this community. She twisted in a last-ditch effort to save face, glaring at the crowd. They're ungrateful. I kept this place clean. I brought money in. All of you benefited, but no one moved. No one spoke. Even the board members she once controlled sat stone-faced, unwilling to come to her defense. The moment the cuffs clicked around her wrists, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. It wasn't just about my cabin anymore. It was about justice. The board dissolved the controversial clauses within the week. Several members resigned, and an emergency vote appointed a new interim president, Martha DeWitt, of all people. She promised transparency and reforms. I didn't attend the celebration barbecue. I had work to do. With Karen gone, I reclaimed my homeroom by room. The hardwood floors were still mine, even if they had been polished to corporate perfection. I found my grandfather's table in the HOA storage facility, shoved behind plastic signs and folding chairs. I repaired what was broken, repainted what was ruined, and reassembled the soul of the cabin. And one afternoon, while sweeping out the last remnants of Karen's designer rugs, I found a crumpled receipt lodged behind the radiator. Property photography. Package. Make your Airbnb pop. Build 2 Tranquil Pines Enterprises LLC registered owner, Karen Huxley. A final nail in the coffin. I handed it to Diego, who smiled like a man holding a royal flush, just in case she tries to appeal. I said. He nodded. Oh, she won't. Not after what's coming. What do you mean? She's not just facing civil suits anymore. The DA is looking into financial misrepresentation and tax evasion. There's a good chance she'll lose more than her freedom. I glanced out at the lake. The wind moved through the trees, again natural, wild, and finally quiet. Karen thought she could rewrite the rules, but this time the rules struck back. A month later, Pine Hollow Hills had transformed, not with manicured lawns or cosmetic upgrades, but with a long overdue reckoning. Karen Huxley's name had been scrubbed from every document bearing the HOA seal. Her Tranquil Pines Enterprises LLC had been dissolved by court order. Local news ran follow-ups weekly, chronicling the slow unraveling of her empire. Bank accounts frozen, civil suits piling up, and felony charges still pending. Her mugshot, once framed by camera-ready curls, became a symbol proof that no one, not even the queen of the clipboard, was untouchable. But justice wasn't the end of the road. It was just the beginning. I stood on my porch, the real porch with its uneven wood slats and stubborn nail heads, breathing in the scent of fresh pine and sawdust. My cabin was whole, again restored, not just in appearance, but in purpose. The sun glinted off the lake, casting soft gold ripples across the surface. Behind me, laughter echoed from the side yard where 3 kids were roasting marshmallows with their parents, victims of similar HOA harassment. Now guests in my newly christened retreat, the sanctuary. It started as a simple idea, just a few friends asking if they could visit, unwind, escape their own HOA nightmares. But when word spread online, messages poured in. Veterans, teachers, young families, all with stories like mine. Some works. And so I expanded. I added 3 small cabins, using salvaged materials from HOA storage, complete with wood-burning stoves, solar panels, and honest-to-God charm. People didn't want perfection, they wanted peace. I gave them both. Sheriff Dalton stopped by one morning, 2 steaming coffees in hand. She took a plea, he said, handing me the cup. No jail time, but a hefty fine, 5 years probation, and mandatory restitution to every homeowner she profited off. I raised an eyebrow. Restitution, he grinned. Check your mailbox. Sure enough, that afternoon I found a certified envelope addressed from Karen's lawyer. Inside was a check, half the cabin's market value, payment for unlawful use, emotional distress, and unauthorized profit. The note read in tight legal script, no apology, no name signed at the bottom. Still, I smiled. Diego advised I could sue for more, but I didn't care. What I needed had already been restored. At the next HOA-wide meeting, Martha DeWitt took the podium to applause. Her first act, dissolving the existing board and introducing a system where every homeowner had equal voting power. No more secret clauses, she declared. No more hidden agendas. And if anyone tries to pull what Karen did, well, Daniel left a bear trap under the porch, didn't you? The room laughed. I shrugged, just keeping the place safe. Later, she approached me with a clipboard ironically. We need a new community liaison, she said. Someone to keep the board honest. You'd be perfect. I shook my head. I didn't come back to lead. I came back to live. She nodded. Then live well. You've earned it. That evening, as twilight painted the treetops in lavender and gold, I sat by the fire pit with a group of guests. They passed around cider and stories about evictions over garden gnomes, fines for wrong-colored shutters, even one man whose HOA banned kids from chalk drawing on sidewalks. I listened. I didn't interrupt, because I knew something they hadn't realized yet. They weren't victims anymore, they were survivors. And just like I had, they'd reclaim what was theirs. Later, after the fire burned low and the guests retreated to their cabins, I stepped inside my home, my real home. The wind whispered through the cracked window panes. The floor groaned just right under my feet, and on the mantel, I placed the last item I'd recovered from storage, a faded photo of my grandfather building this place with his bare hands. He'd always said, "The land remembers." And now, it would remember justice, too. Karen had tried to rewrite the rules, profit from absence, and erase a legacy, but I came back and she never saw it coming.